Assalamu alaikum, my darling, and welcome back to another episode of Manifesting Muslimah. I'm your host, Zara Pedersen, and today I'm going to do something a little bit different because I want to read the first chapter of my book for you today. It's actually the introduction because there's not really like chapters as such, but I like in the way that the book is written, it would like kind of qualify it as the first chapter. And I want to do this because I want to share my book with you and a little bit more about my story with you. Now, this book, of course, is available to purchase on Amazon and on my in my Stan store, and I'll link all of that, of course, in the podcast notes, the show notes, so you can go and check it out for yourself. But I wanted to share a little bit about my own personal journey in getting to the law of attraction. Now, of course, this is just like the introduction of the book, so there is this is a kind of a shortened version of how I got there, because I kind of wanted this book to be a little bit more sort of like, I just wanted to get to the point of how to use the law of attraction from an Islamic perspective, and I didn't want to spend too much time just talking about myself, but I do believe that there is some stuff in my own personal journey that some of you might be able to relate to, and I want to share it because I want you to understand that we all have to start somewhere, and for a lot of us, it starts with a lot of confusion and a lot of searching and a lot of, just trying to figure it out until something eventually clicks. And what I've learned in the last few months of having put myself out there with Manifesting Muslimah is that the more I share about my journey and things like that, the more I realize that my voice has potentially been missing in the world of law of attraction and just generally like an Islamic perspective to law of attraction. And that's why I think there's so much power in our own stories if we know how to reframe it a little bit and changing the perspective on it. And that's, I believe, what I have done. Anyway, I don't want to like toot my own horn, and that's not what I'm trying to do here, but I just want to share like the context of this and sharing this part of my journey. And this is obviously many years of my journey, just in like a couple of thousand words, which again, there's so much more to it. But I do think it really sums it up for you. So that's what I'm going to do for you today. So sit back, relax, grab yourself a cup of tea, and let's do a little read along. If you've got the book, read along with me. If you don't, maybe this will intrigue you to go ahead and get a copy of the book for yourself, or it might intrigue you to really put more effort in your own journey and elevation with the law of attraction, inshallah. Let's see. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to Story Time with Zara Pedersen. I'm sorry, I'm going to stop that. I'm not going to do that to you. All right. So let's get going. I don't know, like 3, 2, 1, action. I'm sorry, I'm so awkward. Okay, let me just go ahead with it. I remember standing in my parents' living room in Copenhagen, Denmark, suddenly gripped by the discussion on the telly. Oprah Winfrey, along with her guests, were discussing a secret, the secret. The concept they spoke of was about how the energy you put out into the world is exactly what comes back to you. That basically you were the creator of your own reality on this earth. I was intrigued, to say the least. You see, this happened in 2007. I was 20 years old and had only just finished a long and difficult treatment course of chemotherapy and radiation to prevent my stage 4 lymphatic cancer from taking my life. I remember so much and very little of this time, like feeling numb and very alive at once. Facing my own mortality at 19 years old shifted many things for me, as expected. And as I stood there, moon-faced from the steroid treatment to heal my scarred lungs from the chemotherapy, watching my then biggest inspiration talk about a way to take charge of your own life was like finding water during a drought. And just like a little note here, this is not in the book, really, notice that watching my then biggest inspiration, because Oprah Winfrey, things that have been coming out, I'm not necessarily very impressed with her anymore, but then I was. All right, let's continue. But there was only one problem though. I couldn't understand how it worked. It felt like they were discussing a math equation, and while I so desperately wanted to understand it, I just couldn't. The answer was right there, but I couldn't see it. A couple of days later, I went down to my local library and borrowed the book for myself. Maybe this would make me understand it better. I read it, but I was none the wiser. It was as though I couldn't absorb the information no matter how much I wanted to. At that point, I decided that this secret was called that because I had to invest a lot of money in coaching or something to actually get the real secret, which they must have left out of the book. So I chalked it all up to being a big scam and went on with my life. Fast forward 7 years to 2014 and I find myself now living in London. I've just completed my journalism studies at college, but instead of working a full-time job as an intern, making appallingly little money just to get into the industry, I, much to my parents' confusion, decided that I wanted to set up my own company within the health and fitness world instead as a personal trainer. This came shortly after I had reverted back to Islam, and my focus was to cater to Muslim women, which I did. It was also at this time that I started leaning more into the world of self-help books in order to grow the right mindset and skills to become a successful businesswoman. I got myself an Audible subscription and started buying books that I could listen to while I was walking my dog or when I was working out in the gym. That's when I found Dr. Joe Vitale's The Attractor Factor. I was hooked. This man spoke about the exact same concept that I'd heard about back in my parents' living room on the Oprah show. The difference now was, this time, the concept made sense. I finally understood what it was all about. So I delved further into the world of the law of attraction, learning as much about this theory as I possibly could. I'd buy books on the subject, watch videos on YouTube, listen to podcasts, subscribe to blogs, and follow anyone and everyone on Facebook and Instagram. Did you hear the little cockatoodle-doo? It's not so little. Can you go somewhere? Sir Lady Chickpea, can you go somewhere? Oh my God, it just cut every episode. Alhamdulillah, that's all I can say. All right, so I'd listen to podcasts, subscribe to blogs, and follow anyone and everyone on Facebook and Instagram who sounded like they knew what they were talking about. The only problem was, while I understood the theory and the majority of it made sense to me, I couldn't seem to make it work for me. It was as if something was still missing, like all these coaches and gurus kept leaving out an important detail to make it all click on purpose, and it was infuriating. And so, after a couple of years of trying to get it, I decided that maybe if I wasn't so keen on figuring it out through other people, it might just come on its own eventually. So I started living my life without putting so much effort into understanding the theory and just tried to live it. And it did work sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes. I could definitely manifest some things, but there was still a lack of conviction there because it still felt like I was missing a big and essential part for it to make sense for me. It wasn't until I was in the beginning of my 30s that some things started falling into place for me. I'd been backpacking around Europe with my dog after deciding that my life in London had gone a bit stale, and after about a year of living in a rucksack, had found myself back in Denmark again, living closer to my family. I had so many questions about Islam, time, and just life. And I found myself borrowing books from my dad's extensive home library of Islamic books and asking him questions in an attempt to understand my religion better. My dad, if you're wondering, is a prominent imam in Denmark who reverted to Islam in a time when white Muslim people in Denmark was unheard of. He has spent many years developing a great understanding of Islam and a trustworthy source for information, which is why I would ask him for clarification on the subject when I was uncertain. Anyway, at some point during this time, I don't remember the moment exactly, as it was more of a gradual awakening than one singular moment, I knew what the secret to the secret really was. The missing link. The thing I'd been looking for all those years in the mainstream teachings of law of attraction, but could never find. It was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And suddenly, my manifestations came far easier to me. I hardly even had to try anymore. I just got it. So I started manifesting with more ease. My own TV show, a book deal, a marriage, a big, beautiful home during our marriage. I forgot to manifest a happy marriage though, so now we're divorced, but still, the home here in Spain where I'm currently writing this book from, and the big rose garden on this property that I've always wanted. I could come up with many more examples, but I'll leave it at this for now, because while this part of the book is about my story, this book is not about me. It's about you. You and your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How you approach the most generous and what you're willing to do to show your complete faith and trust in Him. This is not about becoming a quote unquote co-creator of your life. This is not about asking the universe to give or show you anything. This is about you and what you're willing to do to create the life you want. Because while many believe that the law of attraction is just a mindset game, let me be the one to tell you there's so much more to it than just positive thinking. You have to get in there and create opportunities as well. Cultivate the luck you want and show Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that you're willing to put in the necessary work to receive the blessings from Him. This is about your willingness to better your life. It's about changing your own narrative from victim to victor. It's about taking responsibility of your life instead of shifting blame on your circumstances. It's about being grateful for the privileges that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you and not wasting them. And more importantly, this is about your relationship with the One, the Almighty, the Magnificent. My darling, I pray and I hope that this book can help you in your life. I pray that if nothing else, it can inspire you not to give up on yourself. I pray that this book can be a reason for you to lean in closer to our glorious Lord and allow Him to show you just how much He loves you and His willingness to bless you abundantly. Live in love, Zara. Oh my goodness, the amount of times I almost got tongue-tied just reading that. But that is the introduction. Oh my God, Lady Chickpea Puff, can you go away? I don't know how much you can hear him, but he's literally standing right outside the window that I'm sitting at. Like where my desk is located, and cock-a-doodle-tooing his little lungs away. But okay, is he trying to tell me something? I don't know. Anyway, that's the first chapter of my book. That's the introduction, a little bit about my story. And I go into, I just kind of glean over some things. But the point of this whole journey in the book, and the reason why I think it's so important, is because you can see that even though I'm sitting here today and I'm like, okay, let's talk about the law of attraction. And it seems like I just have so much knowledge around it and I just get it. I do, but this took so many years for me to really get to this point where I get it. It took a lot of research. It took a lot of work on my behalf. It took a lot of even like religious and spiritual work and development within myself to understand the law of attraction from an Islamic perspective. And as I say towards the end of this whole chapter in my story, is that this isn't necessarily about me and my journey. It's about the relationship that you can curate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the way that you trust in His plan. It's about that the level of surrendering to His plan while still also being able to take action and set goals for yourself and, take charge in certain things, your mindset, your belief system, what you're telling yourself, things like that. But once you understand all of these things, it becomes so much easier for you to then really give yourself to the practice of the law of attraction from an Islamic perspective, because you understand it from this religious perspective where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who's creating. And I think this specific thing for me was what changed so much, because the mainstream law of attraction specifically always speaks into the universe doing these things. But me, even before I reverted to Islam, this concept of the universe doing things and creating things from nothing was so far out for me. It was too much of a reach. I could not make that make sense in my head. But God, I could understand in a different way, because God was something that I always wanted in my life. Even when I didn't know that I wanted God, I can still think back and think of the amount of times that I'd still call out for him. So it made more sense for me to understand the law of attraction from the perspective of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being the law of attraction and making it possible for us to use these theories in our lives to make our dreams come true. Anyway, that was just a little bit from my book. I am wondering now if I should make it into like a little like an Audible version. Like I can't get it in Audible because clearly I'm self-employed and all that stuff, or self-employed, self-published, that's the word I'm looking for. Self-published. But I can, if you're interested in it, record like a audio version of the book. I don't know. I'm just sitting here and my brain's just thinking, because that's what it does sometimes. Not all the times, but sometimes. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that little reading from my book, and I hope it makes you feel a little bit more calm and at ease if you don't get all of it just yet. As I said, this is like since 2007. I'm coming up to 20 years in my journey in trying to understand the law of attraction and really making it a part of my life in everyday life. So if you're just starting out and you're like, oh gosh, I just feel like there's so much still and I don't get it, don't worry, it'll come to you. But it's again a question of how you choose to approach it. And I hope that me now being a part of this conversation and the law of attraction and everything like that from this Islamic perspective is helping you move closer both to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and closer to the life that you truly want. But ultimately, the ultimate goal here is to make you have more of that tawakkul and faith and trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me in today's episode. If you have any suggestions for future episodes, or if there's anything that you'd like to just feedback, anything. Oh, that's one thing actually that I don't think I've actually asked you for yet. If you're listening to this on a regular, please feel free to leave me a review wherever you're listening in from. It will help future listeners really understand whether or not this is a podcast for them. And again, it doesn't have to be like a 5-star. If you don't think this is a 5-star worthy podcast, then don't give me 5 stars. I want you to be honest. If it's a 3-star or 2, if it's a 1-star, girl, shut up. Why are you even listening? I don't need you, sis. Like, nobody's forcing you. Like, you don't have to listen. If it's anything less than a 3, I'd say like a 3-star, then I'd be like, girl, you shouldn't even be here then. Like, why are you wasting your own time? Like, yes, I said it. Anyway, my darling, it was a pleasure sitting here with you again today. I will see you in my next episode. But until then, my darling friend, please don't forget to live in love.